Welcome back. I'm Chris Hillman, Principal Environmental Engineer at Tonkin & Taylor, and I'll now present on Beyond Dig and Dump, Sustainable Remediation. What we'll look at in this presentation is how we sell sustainable remediation for site development. To do this, we'll look at what sustainable remediation is, what are the pressures on developers that need to be managed, and how do we do the actual assessment of remediation options for sustainability. There's a number of sustainable remediation definitions, and they're all pretty similar. The International Standard for Sustainable Remediation, ISO 18504, defines it as elimination and/or control of unacceptable risks in a safe and timely manner, whilst optimising the environmental, social and economic value of the work. The key here is that sustainability is measured in terms of impact not only on the environment, but also society and the economy. It's also important to note that when viewed in these terms, dig and dump can be the most sustainable remediation option for some sites. The concept of sustainability has been around for a long time. Section 5 of the RMA promotes sustainability and includes these same core concepts of social, economic and environmental impacts. It also adds in cultural well-being, which is particularly Kiwi. In 2006, a group of professionals banded together and formed the Sustainable Remediation Forum, SURF for short. They had the aim of incorporating sustainability into ground remediation and came up with this somewhat speculative timeline for the evolution of sustainable remediation, starting in the 50s and 60s when ground contamination was very poorly understood, through the birth of remediation industries in the late 1970s following the series of high-profile disasters. These disasters spawned a range of remediation treatments in the 80s and 90s. You may notice the reference in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide that the graph was drawn in 2009. So sustainable remediation reaching maturity by 2020 was very much an aspiration, one we haven't actually achieved yet. In October 2008, SURF conducted a semi-informal survey of SURF member organisations to gauge stakeholder sentiment on what was actually holding sustainable remediation back. Nearly 100 responses were received, just over half from regulators, mainly in the US and Canada, a quarter from consultants, and the remainder from industry and institutions. One of the questions asked was around what respondents believed were the most significant barriers to incorporating sustainable remediation in their organisations. If this survey was run today, the percentages on this graphic would probably change, but these barriers are probably all still around today. Lack of regulatory driver is probably still the most significant, although that may change with the increase of the waste levy over the next few years, making dig and dump less and less attractive. noting that we're likely to have to get an order of magnitude greater than the current $10 a tonne before we see companies form who are likely to take contaminated soils away and remediate them on separate sites. The main pressure on land developers is achieving a return on their investment that they put into the development. And this graph illustrates that challenge. We've got the cost of the development on the y-axis and the time spent on the x-axis. In the top left-hand corner, point A is the value of the property were it not affected by contamination, the unimpaired value. Point B in the bottom left-hand corner is the price that landowner is asking the developer to pay for the property, allowing for the fact that there's contamination there. The developer's challenge is to make sure that they spend on points C, D, and E, which is the investigation, remediation, and ongoing monitoring, less money than it costs to actually buy the property unimpaired. All things being equal, people buying the property from the developer, especially if it's a residential property, would probably prefer to buy an uncontaminated site rather than a remediated one. So there's market resistance that the developer needs to take into account as well. And all these things need to be balanced if the developer is to get a return on their investment, makes the development worthwhile for them. So let's have a look now at how we actually compare remediation options to see which one's the most sustainable. ISO 18504 provides guidance on this. The key point though is that however you assess the options, make sure you're keeping the assessment as simple as possible, particularly if you have a number of stakeholders who will be reviewing the assessment at the end. The assessment won't be any good if half the stakeholders are lost in the detail or don't understand what you've done. The key initial considerations before you start the assessment are listed here. Firstly, what's the assessment trying to achieve? Is it part of the developer's triple bottom line, or is it going to form part of a consultation package for information? What are the likely remediation options that will work? We may not want to assess everything, so which 3 or 5 options are likely to be the most practicable? Who are the stakeholders? Do we understand which elements of the assessment they are most interested in? And what are the project boundaries? Are we looking at a whole of life assessment or just up to the point of selling the property on? Which indicators are we going to assess? Simply economic, social and environmental? Or are we going to put culture in there as well? What additional indicators might stakeholders be looking for or want emphasis on? How are we going to assess each parameter? Qualitatively, a scoring system? Do the stakeholders agree with the method that we've chosen? And finally, how detailed will this assessment be? Will we assess a long list qualitatively, then quantitatively for a short list generated from that? Or are we just going to dive straight in with a quantitative assessment? So finally, once those questions are answered, we can actually get down to the assessment of sustainability for each of the options. This table shows an example of the type of issues you might want to assess against each parameter. Not all of these are appropriate for every assessment, but it does give a flavour for how you might want to approach assessing the economic, social and environmental impacts and the benefits of each option. So for the environment, we have considerations on what the impact on air quality, ecology and aesthetics might be, along with resource use. For economic, we have the economic benefits and the costs, not only for the developer, but for the wider community. If one option gives work to the local community, then that might score highly for this parameter. And finally, we've got social indicators. How will the remediation options affect the neighbourhood? Are they noisy, dusty? Which ones fit with the planning policy? Which ones do the local stakeholders actually prefer? So in conclusion, the sustainability of any remediation is going to depend on how invested in sustainability the developer is. Are the stakeholders driving this or not? Does it make economic sense? Does it make environmental and social sense? Is that sense accepted by the developer and the stakeholders? And finally, is the assessment as simple as it can be? Is it easily understandable by everyone? Only by considering all these things can we hope to communicate to the developer and stakeholders what the most sustainable remediation option for any particular development might be. Thank you. Okay, we're ready for our last exercise. You've got about 15 minutes to complete this. There's two things we want you to look at. First, how will you convince John that the remediation that leaves a contamination tag for the site is the best option? And also, how are you going to help John understand the monetary value associated with a clean site versus a tagged site? Those in the hubs, please return to the group you were in for the last exercise. If you're not in a hub, click on the same Zoom room link that you were in last time. See you back here in about 15 minutes. Okay, so time to report back. Can the other facilitators copy and paste a summary of their responses into the chat, please? Group 4's thoughts were that it was a pretty easy decision for John to make, especially if we estimate some rough order costs of what it might cost to create a clean site before he's sold anything. Although one way around this might be to remediate one lot at a time, using the profits from that to fund the next lot development. It would also be worth It would also be worth pointing John towards getting a couple of valuations for the development, one with a tag and one without a tag. When compared to the costs of remediation, the reduction in value for a tag might not seem so significant. And now, before we close up the workshop, a word from our sponsors.
Located within the Eurofins Food Analytics facility, Eurofins Environment Testing Auckland utilise an agile team of highly skilled technical and administrative staff. Accredited to ISO 17025, the committed team ensure every project, report and sample are faithfully handled and executed for our clients. Sample receipt is the epicentre for sample management in the Auckland laboratory. Our dedication to process improvement ensures we are consistently providing our customers with value-adding solutions. Lean operations design enables the sample receipt officer, analytical services manager and instrument chemist to work adjacently for efficient project communication and fast TAT results. Small laboratories can be the most efficient with best practice design combining the extraction and instrumentation sub-laboratories for faster sample flow. Intentional free bench space for expansion, the Auckland laboratory will rapidly increase capacity to suit project demands. The Auckland Metals Laboratory features state-of-the-art inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry technology capable of sub-parts per billion levels of detection at high sample throughput. Optimised acquisition method and data processing means Eurofins customers can enjoy fast and reliable results with very low limits of reporting. The Auckland Semi-Volatiles Laboratory features a specialised suite of cutting-edge gas chromatography instrumentation. The GC-MS-MS triple quad and low thermal mass GC-FID offer dependable results for every analyte in every sample. Mass Hunter software enables fast and accurate processing of chromatographic data and mass spectra. The Auckland Volatiles Laboratory is temperature and pressure controlled to ensure your VOC sample quality and integrity is always maintained. Optimised purge and trap GC-MS instrument performance and robotic sample prep automation is utilised to deliver fast TAT results routinely. The Christchurch Asbestos Laboratory is expanding and will continue to offer fast TAT results on all New Zealand samples. Construction of the Auckland Asbestos Laboratory is now complete and will soon be offering same-day fibre identification, counting and air monitoring solutions. As quoted by Dr. Gilles Martin, Eurofins Chairman and CEO, Eurofins is structured as a network of entrepreneur-led companies. This decentralised structure promotes closer and more individualised service to clients and fosters business agility and scientific innovation. Since the company's inception, its laboratories have invented many new testing methods and applications which have had a significant positive impact on life and health.
We're now at the end of the workshop. Hopefully you've enjoyed today and feel you're much more confident in your ability to make good decisions when evaluating data pragmatically, identifying the range of remediation options that are sustainable and achieving defendable remediation outcomes. You'll be able to have access indefinitely to all the presentations you've seen today on the YouTube channel. The summit continues tomorrow at 9 a.m, kicking off with 2 keynotes from Neil McInroy, Chief Executive for the Centre of Local Economic Strategies, and Tony Alexander, economic speaker and writer. Neil's keynote will be on the building a new economy for people, place and planet, and Tony's will be on looking beyond the COVID shock. The CLM stream will then continue at 10:45 a.m. with a session on sustainability and contaminated land. So have a good rest of your day and see you tomorrow.